Welcome. So today we are here to do this talk called Swift Development with UI Library. And in this talk, we will give you a sneak peek into the future. And we'll show how we can fastly develop components, no, not components, UI in Umbraco in the future. And I'll just try to use the remote. Okay, so to tell that story, we'll use a fictional girl called Emma, and she's working in a fictional agency.
Yes.
And on that, in that agency, she's working on a fictional project for pet
adoption charity.
Thank you.
Website. It's a website for pet adoption charity, and on this website, there will be a lot of different types of content, and most of these items are related to each other somehow, and she wants to reflect that on the web page. So it can be really hard to keep it all up to date and maintain these relationships, especially if you add a new content. So we need some setup that doesn't require revisiting existing content items to keep those relationships up to date.
And this is where Emma comes into play. So she'll make sure that all content and media can be tagged, and those tags can then be used to create those relations. And luckily, she can use the tags property editor that we know already today in Umbraco. These tags are stored globally and can be shared across any type of content. So in this way, content editors can easily define relationships and then query them later on. So to set up which relations to show when they want to show relations, Emma could use the same property editor. But just picking those tags doesn't give a very good editorial experience for picking and maintaining tags. So instead, Emma will create a solution where her clients can verify that they actually picked a good combination of tags.
And to make this happen, she will develop a custom property editor that takes one or more tags and then displays all the content marked with the chosen tags. So if she would have to do it today, that would take a lot of front-end code to write, but this will soon change because she will have Umbraco UI Library at hand. So in a little bit, we will show you how she builds this property editor. But first, let's zoom out a bit and get the big picture of what UI Library is.
So the UI Library is the first step for us to bring back office up to speed in terms of the front-end technology. The project will provide all the pieces needed to build UI in Umbraco. It's an open source project of pure client-side code. And it will only contain UI components, and thereby it's separated from any business logic. In this way, we have ensured that each component only acts as a visual building block. Each of the components are then carefully designed to solve a desired set of use cases. And at the same time, by collecting them in the same project together, we are in a much better place to ensure visual consistency, but also consistency in terms of how you implement and use these components. So each component is a package on its own and can be used by anyone. So not just in Umbraco software, but by anyone. And this is especially possible because we use native browser technology. So in other words, they are framework agnostic. Additionally, their styles are encapsulated and embedded into each component. And this means there's no requirement of the application that they're used in, and neither does the styling of these components flow out, and it's not affected by styling of the application it's used within. So that's pretty handy. So this means that they can be used in any project.
And all this is possible because UI Library is based on Web Component standard. And what this standard allows us to create is custom, reusable HTML elements that can be used just like we use the native ones. So all you need to do is to put this tag into the markup if you want some UI library element. All these tags are prefixed with UUI, so they do not collide with the existing native elements. Each of the component is self-contained, and both logic and styles are embedded within. This is also something that Web Component Standard allows us to do. It's a feature of modern browsers, so we don't need to use any JavaScript framework for that. This is all a browser thing. And each component is delivered as a separate package, and that way we can test and make sure they work before they are actually used in any project. This also allows us to focus on an important thing, like accessibility. We put quite an effort into make them all really accessible.
Yeah, definitely. So let's go back to Emma and see how she'll use the UI library to create this property editor. And here Emma already set up a basic property editor, and it's not anything fancy. It's just an H1 tag, as you can see right here. But this is making her able to start making the UI that she needs to do. But before she starts doing that, she needs to figure out what components from the UI library she will be using. The UI library comes with a special application to explore components of the library, and this application is called Storybook. And this is what it looks like. In the left side panel, we have all the components listed and stories of each component. And those stories are showing different use cases of a component. So this way we can easily navigate around and see how the different components look and behave, what they can be used for. And up here in the top, we can switch tab to the Docs tab. And in this one, we get an overview of the component's attributes and properties that we can set on it. And it also shows which events a component eventually can fire. So this page works as the documentation of a component. And it shows us how you will implement this component. So the properties of a component can be used to change the state of a component. And we can actually try that out real life in the Storybook application here. So what we just tried here was to see how does the button look when it's disabled, and how does it look if we change the label. That's quite handy to be able to try it out yourself.
So Emma needs a tag component, and let's look it up in the sidebar. Here it is. It's nothing special. This is how it looks like in the basic form. And here we can see it comes in different looks and sizes. So if we switch to the Docs tab, we can see the attributes and properties of this component. For this one, it's size and look. We can also see that it has an unnamed slots. Slots are extension points into which we can insert HTML of our choice, and it's going to be rendered. In this case, it's the content of the tag. So here is the story representing the version of a tag that Emma wants to use. It comes with a remove button inside. In the latest version of Storybook that is live, we have code snippets inside it. But for now, let's take a look behind it, behind the story. And here it is, UUI tag. So we just use it as a native element. And all that Emma has to do is just to put this into her property editor. Let's copy the story with a button for later use. And back at our property editor, we can try inserting the tag component. So let's type it in, UUI tag. Let's put some content inside it, and let's close the element. And back to property editor. Oh, sorry. Oops. I went a little bit too far, but
let's go back.
Let's go back to property editor. We have to refresh it. No, now, okay, it's there. Trust us. It's really there. So.
Yeah. So. Okay. We skipped the point here, but we saw a tag inserted in back of
yes.
this. But Emma needs the tag with a close button. So we'll just paste what we copied before. And let's see how that looks at least. And that looks like this. And that just works out of the box. We have the blue tag with a hello label on it and a remove button. And that's quite cool. And what we just pasted was actually not just one component, but 3 components. And the reason why it's made like this is because we are aiming to have simple UI components in the UI library that are open for extensions. And we don't want bloated components. So the UI tag component should not be a complex component that can also has the ability to add a remove button and so on. Instead, it's an open component and we can inject other components within it. So by that, we're able to make compositions just like this. And here we're using these 3 components, a UUI tag, and within it, there's a UUI button. And within that, there's an icon, which is the crossing that we see. So this enables us to make more complex components of the simple ones. So yeah, as I just said, the UI tag component doesn't know anything about the button or the ability to have a button within it. So that's actually quite handy that we can make things fit our own use case or our own case basically. So we can configure the components by adding attributes, just like we know from any other native HTML elements. And in this code we just pasted, we have the look attribute being set to primary, and that's the way we turned the tag into a blue tag. And again, remember in this case we are in an AngularJS world, or we're in the AngularJS code, and we're using web components, 2 technologies that doesn't know anything about each other, because web components are newer than AngularJS, and web components doesn't know about the AngularJS framework's existence. But still, these are able to work, coexist, because they're using technology of the browser.
So now Emma needs a way to Emma has a way to display the tags, but she still needs a way to type them in. So for that, we're going to use a drop-down component from the UI library and together with a native input to filter the available options. So let's find the drop-down in the storybook. We can put it into the sidebar, and here it is. We can see that it has a default slot and the drop-down slot for the element that should not be visible all the time. So let's look a bit behind the code. As you can see, there are 2 elements there. One is mapped to a default slot, which is always visible, and the other one is in the slot called dropdown. We can specify which slot the child element should appear by using this slot attribute. This is how we tell the children element where it should be displayed.
Cool. So let's try to put this dropdown into our property editor and wire the things together with some AngularJS code. So here we typed in the dropdown, and we'll be adding a native text input inside of it for filtering. And what we want to happen is that when the input has focus, we want the dropdown to open. So when the input has focus, we set a variable to true, the open drop-down variable, and for that to work in AngularJS world, we have to add a controller as well. So we'll do that in the top here. And then when the variable is true, we want the open attribute on the drop-down to be set to true. And ideally, we would do that just like this, where we just write open equal.
Excuse me, Niels. There's only 2 to 3 minutes left.
Oh, we need to rush up. Okay, I'll be very fast. But we'll make sure that the dropdown opens when that variable is set to true. Yeah, and we want to make sure to sync that when it's closing. So let's just add a green box just to see how it looks and works. Oh, cool. There's a green box here when we have focus on the input field. Looking good. And we'll just wrap it in a border to make it look nice. Okay, so let's remove that green box again and try to see how it will look with some real options that we can select. So we'll just put in 3 options using the select option component, just like that. And we can try see how that looks. So again, a component from the UI library that enables us to make some options in the dropdown. Okay, so I'll just quickly run through how Emma will tie this together with some AngularJS. It's not super important, but it's just so you don't feel like we are inventing something magic behind the scenes. So we'll have an array for the tags, we'll have an array for the options available, we'll have methods for adding and removing tags, we'll have a method for filtering the options, and we'll loop through the tags that we display that are sort of picked. We'll use ng-repeat directive from AngularJS for that. And we will do the same thing with the options to loop over the available options that we have when you filter with the text input. And then when you click an option, we will make sure to add that to the list of selected tags. So let's see how that works. So we are able to filter the tags as we type, and we can pick them, and they appear in our list of selected tags. So Julia, go ahead.
But this is not done. We need some way to display the content. So let's jump into the UI library and let's find the card component there. Here it is. We have a couple of them there. We're gonna need this one with picture and the one that just represents the content. So let's put them into our property editor and let's see how it looks like. That's not much for now. Now we're gonna wrap it up in another component called UUI grid, which will present them nicely in a nice grid. Let's add the media card too, so we can display the media items, and here it is. That looks pretty well.
Cool. So let's just connect this with the results of our AngularJS controller. So if there's any result, we'll show this grid, and we'll use the ng-repeat directive again. And if the type of the result is of content, then we'll use the content card. And if it's of a media item, then we'll use the media card. So then we'll just need to hook up the right attributes. We have name, icon, and some details that we'll hook up. And yeah, eventually you're thinking, how did we get the right results based on some tags?
With magic.
Yeah, we didn't solve that in this case. So we're using a magic service for that. So let's see how that looks. So we put in some tags and we see the results that fits them. And as we put more tags in, the result is narrowed down. So that's quite handy, I think. And as well, we hooked up the infinite editor service, so you can actually straight from this view open up and edit your content. Quite handy for editors. So let's just zoom out a little bit and look at what we just did. I think in relatively short time we made a property editor that looks and feels like Umbraco. We didn't really write any styles. Well, that's not completely true, because actually we wrote this, but I don't count that as being much of styling. So thanks to the UI components taking care of displaying our data, we have a much simpler property editor code, and this makes it much easier to maintain for the future. And I don't know how it is with timing, but maybe we'll just skip through this one. How is the timing, Hank? How many minutes are left? No connection.
Okay.
Well, okay. So the next part of our presentation shows how Emma, sorry, will develop her own card, which is a product card. But I think we'll just skip over that and then to the end. Right?
We'll go through it very quickly. So we need this product card with a name and the price and the picture. So we're gonna make a class for that component, and it's gonna extend the UUI card element class. This is the one that comes from UI library, and under the hood it uses a small library called lit, which lets us develop web components easier. We're gonna define two properties, name and the price, and we're gonna need a render method to put some markup there, some more complex markup than just two spans. We will add a slot to display the image of a product, and you can see that we are using IDs, but they are scoped to the component. They don't leak out from web components. This is one of the cool features of it. Let's add some styles so the product card looks nice and awesome. And with that ready, Emma can finish the property editor.
Exactly. And she will, so her own developed product card will be used just in the same way as the other cards we use from the UI library. So she will write the tag and we'll put an ngIf. So we only show this card when the result is of the type product. And we will bind some attributes, the name and the price. And we'll add an image similar to what we did with the media card. So let's try to see how that looks now with her own UI component in the mix. So as we are putting in tags, we see the product card appearing as well with things that matches the product. So what just happened now is that we can combine and use the component the UI component, from the library as that fits our needs. But if we need to extend it, we can also do that. So I think this gives us a good idea about how the components work and how we can use them in our implementation. And this is super nice because each component shows our data in a nice way with a very minimal set of attributes and data required for that. So if we put ourselves into Emma's mind, I think she will be happy to know that the UI she's using is being tested separately and before it's being released. And with that, she can focus on testing just her business logic and the composition of the UI.
So when you can use it, good news, you can use it now. It's published, all the components are published on NPM. They are not in back office yet, but they will be there soon. For now, you can install them yourselves and check out how it feels to use them. When we ship them to back office, you can start using them in your packages. That will make them future-proof and compatible with the next back office. So where to find them? This is pretty easy question. You can just go to uui.umbraco.com. This is where our storybook is hosted. And you can also visit our GitHub repo. We would very much like some discussion, contribution, and input from you.
Please.
Yes, please do that. And thank you very much. This is all for us.